No one was allowed to practice religion.
Correct. At that time, religion was a sin. I was born in Cuba. I lived under the communist system of Fidel Castro and his brother. In my school years, the war started. I remember clearly saying phrases like Yankees go home, things like that, because that's what the training that we got.
Let's talk about you escaping Cuba.
I was pregnant and I said, this is it. I cannot stay here. I either go or I'll die. But I'm not having a baby in this country. When people sing the American anthem or pledge allegiance to the flag, I still get that emotion. I will get goosebumps because there was God in it. This is something that I could never experience in my country.
Hello, and welcome to the Degrees of Success podcast. I'm your host, Frida Richards, and today we have an incredible guest with us. She is a University of Phoenix alum receiving her master's and doctorate with us. Dr. Lang's story is one of resilience, determination, and an unwavering pursuit of knowledge. From escaping communist Cuba on a makeshift raft to becoming a respected researcher, educator, and her experiences will leave you captivated and inspired. Dr. Lang, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's an honor.
Absolutely. Listen, you have such an incredible story. I just want to jump right in. Let's start with how it all started, where it all began. Tell us about your childhood and where you came from.
Okay, so evidently I was born in Cuba. And since my early memories began, and I can recall, I lived under the communist system of Fidel Castro and his brother. As a little girl, I was nurtured by my parents. I had great parents, but also we had great scarcity. But we never lacked love, and we never lacked companionship. Remember myself going to school in my very early years and wearing the uniform that you have to wear to go to school because it was mandatory, and wearing the hat for, they call it pioneers. It's like, these are like young people who are part of the revolution, part of the system, young people who are being formed under the system. So being formed was kind of like brainwashed. So in my early years, I was a fervent believer, because I was 5, 6, 7, that everything that it was provided to me in the school and the ideology was perfect. I was talking before I spoke to you, and I mentioned the war in Vietnam, for example. Let me give you a concrete example. I was born in 1965. So in my school years, I remember clearly, going, the war started, the word was there. And I remember clearly singing or saying phrases like Yankees go home, things like that, because that's what the training that we got. As a little girl, and throughout my schooling, I remember the prohibition of books, for example, something that I cherish. I love reading. And so when I was a little girl, I didn't know that there was a prohibition of books per se. But I would read stories and stories. And as I grew up and I became a woman and I started thinking on my own through college, we were not allowed to read any other philosophy that it was not Marx and Engels and Lenin. So it was the communist thing. So basically my schooling was in that context, a lot of prohibition. I was angry. And one of the reasons why I think it was angry is because I was not allowed to express myself. There was an organization that it was the Youth Communist of Cuba. That's what it was called. And once you were a certain age, you start teenagehood, you were considered to be part of it. And I never wanted to be part of it. So they questioned me, why is it that you don't want to be part of it? I don't want to peep out of it. I was so angry. I couldn't explain myself exactly why, but there was something amiss. For example, you could not question a member of that group. As a student, if you complain about a member of that group, you were sanctioned, you were dismissed, you were actually scolded for questioning a member of that group, especially if you were an outsider. So I was so angry. I was so angry at the things that they did and that were overlooked, and I just simply started growing angrier and angrier in my early youth. And that's how my child. I remember my mother struggling in many ways, and there is a story. And I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but there is a story when I was a little girl, maybe I don't know, 7, 8, maybe maximum 8, which I remember clearly because mom was born before 1959. So right now she's 84 years old. My mother was young at that time. I was a little girl, and I used to run around with friends in the house and that kind of thing. So I went into my mother's bedroom, and I remember my mother having a picture behind the clothes. The closet, and then you have your clothes, and behind the clothes there was a picture. And I never asked my mother that question. For some reason that day, I asked my mother, "Mom, who's that?" Because my mother had the clothes slightly apart. My mother got so angry at me, I could not fathom. I think, I don't know my face at that moment, but I could not fathom why my mother got so angry at me. And the reason why my mother got angry at me is because it was the picture of the Christ. So I always, when I talk to people about that, I say, "Mom, do you remember the man in the closet?" Because my mother would not allow me to talk about it because it was forbidden. One of the consequences could be either from jail to not being able to go to school. They would not allow you to go to school.
So
And
let me make sure that I understand. Your mother wanted to pray to Christ. She had a photo behind in the back of the closet behind clothes because she wasn't allowed. No one was allowed to practice religion.
correct. At that time, religion was a sin. As a matter of fact, I overheard stories that in 1959 and through the 1960s, there was a major fleet of Cuban priests who came to Miami, accompanying children whose parents told them to take them with them to be able to save them from communism. That's what I heard, and I think that Exodus was called Peter Pan. Peter Pan because there were children that were accompanied by priests. It was in the 1960s, somehow along those lines. So my Exodus was called Sea Signal. So there have been different Exodus throughout time. So most definitely, I remember my mother, and I remember this because my mother is not an angry person. She's very calm, very sweet, and reaction really was very, very angry reaction, and it really stunned me. And when I asked her, I said, "Don't you ever talk about this with your friends? I can't go to jail." So the fear was immense. I was never raised in religion. My mother is very religious. My mother prayed every day in secret. She never instilled that until I discovered God on my own when I was older. But that was a very it was a very marked moment of my childhood, seeing your parents so angry for something that you don't understand. And so later on, I clearly understood. I was just fearful that my friends would see that picture, so I always hid it. And I remember an incident. This is funny, but it's also tragic. My mother, in her devotion for praying and the Catholic Church and the things that she was raised when she was a young woman before the revolution, she lit a candle in the closet for Virgin Mary, those kind of things, and the clothes got on fire. But yeah, those things I remember because she had to hide everything. She had to hide the candles. The candles, unless there was no electricity, why would you have a candle burning? With a picture of the Christ, so or a virgin or things like that. So
Right. But she kept that from you because she wanted to keep you safe.
and my sister, both of us. She would never talk about God. I didn't know that there was a God in existence. Nothing like that. It was just a life of not religion, no books that I wanted to read, nothing like that.
So your mother sounds like now I heard you say that she's calm and sweet, and it sounds like she was being very protective of you and your sisters. And throughout your story, there's so much passion and drive. It's inspirational. I'm curious, who was your inspiration growing up that helped put that fire in you?
My mother and my father, both of them. My father would utter phrases like this about honesty and about transparency. He was from another generation where that was valued, and lying and things like that were not in my father's character. His discipline. My father was so disciplined. I remember my father had no education. My father grew up in a farm with my grandpa, and the only thing that he did was help my grandpa since he was a little child. Milk the cows, that kind of stuff. But he always had this thirst for knowledge. And he would read history books, the ones that were allowed to read. And, the Mambises, for example, that was allowed. The Mambise was like the troops or the army that rebelled against the Spanish conquerors who came to Cuba during the Independence War, the 10 years Independence War. So they're called the Mambises because they are a mix of Mambises. They were a mix of native Cubans and Spaniards. So pretty much like here, when the United States and England got mixed together, and so there were people who were the parents were from England, but they were born in the country here in the United States. So it's like they call them Ambises. It's a group of it's an army actually. It's an army that rebelled against the Spaniards. So my father liked the stories, and he read about history, and he had discs, and he would listen to those discs. The discs were before the revolution. He was trying to learn English. And I will hear my father repeat the words. And I said, "This is nice. I want to learn that." He cherished those discs. They were very, very old because it was before the revolution. It was amazing to see him, trying to learn. So my father was definitely, my mother was more like, sweet and protective. He was protective too, but he was like, you have to go to school. You have to. So he instilled all of that kind of stuff on me. And so they were very careful by not revealing their thoughts about that I was able to get into school, because otherwise, if they found out that my mother or father had any kind of ideas against the system, I could not go to universities. So that's why you have to live a lie. You have to live it, and that makes you angry.
Well, and your father was so against lying.
He was very against it, but he could not do any other thing. If he had revealed his true self, he would have been in deep trouble. He would have lost his job. You know that there were people who expressed a desire to leave the country, and they were sent to work in fields.
Because they expressed a desire to leave.
Yes. For years and years and years. And if they received a visa, they left. But they were, everything that they had, their houses, they went in and conducted inventory. The smallest thing like a plate, they counted it. None of it you could take with you. People will smuggle golden jewelry and things like that. And sometimes when they were found with it, they had to actually give some to the guards to let them go because they will retain them. I hear all of those stories, and now that I'm older, this is ridiculous. But and this is something that doesn't happen in the United States. So let me tell you something. One of the moments where I realized that I was in a different place was when I actually heard people. Clinton was the president when I entered the country. When I heard people talking bad about the president, I was like, are they crazy? They shouldn't do that. Oh my God, they're good. And people will talk freely about the president. And that was like an aha moment. Another aha moment for me was when I came here and I started working in a school for the first time in the US in 1997 in Arizona. The Pledge of Allegiance. I would get goosebumps because there was God in it. And I was, wow, freedom. So I was so happy. Those are probably for you guys who were born here, who were raised here. That means nothing. But up to this day, when people or the American anthem, when people sing the American anthem or pledge allegiance to the flag, I still get that emotion. I get that. Wow, this is something that I could never experience in my country. This freedom. And so it was just an amazing experience to come to the greatest country. It is the greatest country in the world. And I don't care what people say. And experience all of that, being able to study and be myself and getting to travel by saying something and discussing things with people in a civil way without being put to jail or things like that.
Right. I could definitely understand how you can feel that way coming from Cuba, where you literally had to lie about who you were and what you desired to do. So I could definitely understand you being taken back by the experiences that we have here in America. And I have to partner with you in saying I get the same chills every time I hear the anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance, because I am an Army brat and a Marine brat. So my family fought for the freedoms of America. So I get I feel so much great honor to be able to be here, knowing that so many men and women died for my freedom and sacrificed.
Absolutely. And I salute the great generation and all of the generations after that and the generations before that who fought for the freedom that we have in this country. I say we because I am an American. In 2005, I visited Cuba because my father died of lung cancer. He was suffering from the disease. He had not died yet. And I swore myself that I will never set foot on that land again. And I will not. It's a beautiful island, but it's not a beautiful government. And so I have no time. My mother is there, but I don't have, my mother has visited several times. But I don't have any other ties than my mother. My entire family is there. With me here are my children and, well, my ex-husband and my dogs. But other than that, I do feel that I am Cuban because I was born there. But that was not the country that granted me the freedom that I needed to become who I am. I always say that it is only under freedom that you can be everything that you can. Otherwise, you're holding back because you cannot express yourself. And that's the same thing with art. If somebody regulates your art or regulates your brain, you cannot be free. You cannot express. You cannot reach your pinnacle.
And so I completely agree. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about you escaping Cuba, because that story is so inspirational and you were so brave. So take us through that story and that moment.
So, yeah, last year I accumulated all of that anger. I wanted to read Socrates. I wanted to read all of these Plato's philosophers, and I couldn't. I would hide magazines that tourists will give me. And I go, wow, look at this, look at that. It's another world, right? But anyways, when I reached, I was so angry. My mother would tell me, you will have to leave. I'd rather have you leave than see you in a Cuban jail. Cuban jails, you have no human rights whatsoever. But my father, when he found out that we were building the raft, so my ex-husband with a couple of friends decided, this is it. I was pregnant. And I said, this is it. I cannot stay here. I either go or I'll die. But I'm not having a baby in this country. And so my husband and a couple of friends started building, buying inner tubes, tractor inner tubes. And they bought 5, put them together, tying them together. But then they created a structure made of iron to make like the skeleton outside in the form of a triangle. And they accommodated those 5 inner tubes there with a lot of styrofoam, styrofoam inner tubes, but a lot of styrofoam. And they tied together, welded the skeleton, and paddles, no engine, no nothing. We thought it was going to be, okay, nothing. I had no idea. I really had no idea. I was just wanted to escape. In my mind, I guess that you go like in a trance when if that's the best way I can find to describe it. When you are resolved to do something, you just go, I'm going to do this. And I don't know how to explain the thinking process or the psychology behind it, but you do not see, at least I didn't see myself dying. And if I saw myself dying, I didn't care. I wanted to leave. And I remember thinking this, well, I'm pregnant. My father is not happy. He was crying. He kneeled in front of me, begging me not to leave. And I said, Dad, if I stay here, I'm going to die sooner than if I go in the ocean, because I was very vocal. And my mother would go, stop, and I fell for my mother. And I also said, I cannot do this anymore, because I was going to go to a Cuban jail. So when we decided to leave, I told Dad said, okay, that's fine. I will accept it. I'm going to give you this canvas so that you build your sail. Because in the group that we came, there was a guy who belonged to the Cuban sailing team. So he knew how to, maneuver with sails and things like that. So that's what we had, a sail. We built a sail, the raft, and the paddles. And it's funny, but it is not funny. He said, but the only thing that I want you to do, he called me Juani, is that the day that you leave, I want you to tell me where you are leaving from, what area of the coast, because we live very close to the ocean. And I told her, no, we're going to be leaving from this point. But no, I left from another point, because I didn't want my father to start crying, or I knew my father was going to be heartbroken. I didn't want those emotions to hold me the moment when I was leaving. So my father, I heard that when the next morning he came and the raft was gone, he just burst into tears. It was a disaster, human disaster. But then, okay, so going back to that, we built a raft. We paid somebody with a truck about $100. In Cuba, $100 was a lot of money back then. And he transported us to the beach. And so we ran, and all these men ran, like 7 of them, and put the artifact on the ocean. So we walked and to like the water up to here, and we just climbed in and just started paddling. And we were, I don't know, paddling all night long. We did see the Cuban Coast Guard go back and forth, but from the distance. So I don't know, they didn't catch us. So the night went by. That night wasn't so bad. But the next day, around 4, 5 o'clock, started raining. And okay, we started to see the waves getting a little bit crazy. And at night, it was just a nightmare. Like I explained to people that I do remember a lot, but I have lost a lot of memory of that, because it was such a bad storm. I could see, I don't know if it's in my imagination, but I could see, I still have the picture We were on a raft, right? All tied together, tried to hold on. We couldn't paddle because we couldn't paddle because it was a storm. So the wave, I would see a wave coming, a real tall wave coming. It was in the middle of the night. And I don't know if the height, but I would see that massive thing coming toward us. And we will go like this. And then all of a sudden, whoop! And it was just scary. It was scary. And that lasted all night long until the next day. The next day, I don't know where we were, but in the early wee hours of the morning, we saw a plane. And it was not a plane from Cuba. It was a plane from the United States.
How did you know that?
I'm sorry?
How did you know it was a plane from the United States instead of
Because
Cuba?
they threw a little parachute with a message. You're not going to believe this. There was an organization that used to be in Miami that was called Cubanos al Rescates, Cubans to the Rescue. They were an organized group of Cubans who migrated to the United States in similar conditions or before that, and they had a fleet of airplanes and things to spot Cubans in the Florida Strait, and they spot us. And they sent a little parachute with something. So they paddle and paddle and paddle and paddle. And what we didn't know was, and that was in that message, that another huge amount of Cubans had already left the same night. 30,000 according. And so the U.S. Coast Guard didn't have enough, were not organized enough, whatever, to rescue all of us. So that was the message. And the message said that they had already given us the coordinates to the U.S. Coast Guard to come and rescue us. But guess what? 3 days passed. Nothing. We could see the light of sometimes we could see the light of the Coast Guard. Green. Have you seen that when you are at night in a street and you see the green light, that intense green or more? I don't know, because it was darker, you could see the. So on the third night, after all of that ordeal, vomiting, I was vomiting. There was a nurse in the group who said he had brought some medicines and IVs. And he says, if you continue to vomit, because I was pregnant, I am going to give you an IV. And I looked at him because I'm scared of needles. and I remember looking at my husband's face, and I could see sadness in his eyes and worried. I could see that. And I was, wow, this is just something terrible. So at night, it was very, very cold. I was wet because of the waves and the situation that I just narrated to you. And we were all like a group of puppies together, like that. And we don't, husband and no husband, friends, God, there was my cousin, everybody together like this. And that's how kind of like, I guess we survive a little bit of the cold. It's very cold at night, especially if you're wet in the ocean. So I was wearing a pair of shorts and I lost my shoes in that storm. I don't know where they went. So it was a pair of tennis shoes. So on the third night, we saw that light of the U.S. Coast Guard that I mentioned. We've seen that plenty of times. But that night, the sea was not as rough. And I told my ex-husband at the moment, we either paddle. You can also see the silhouette of the ship. But when you are in the ocean, you don't know the distance. It could be there, but it could be miles and miles away. So we paddled. And they started paddling and paddling and paddling and paddling. And we had a lighter because one of the group person that was in our group smoked, but the lighter was wet. And so it did not, had that flame. But it did have a faint spark. And I thought, they're going to see this and the yelling and the screaming. Okay. They're all of a sudden, we had the spotlight of that ship, poof, on us, like that. And
what
said,
was
wow.
your feeling right when, you see the green light, there's hope. Your husband's looking panicked because he's thinking, my wife does not look great. The nurse is saying she needs an IV. She's afraid of needles. And now you see this green light. You're trying to spark the lighter. and then the light. What is that feeling
I
when
cannot
this bright light
express. I
comes?
cannot express in words the feeling. It was a feeling of, oh, I cried. My mother had given me a small virgin to hold in my hand while I was in that in that journey, and I just kneeled on that raft and thanked that virgin. I don't know, 1,000 times. I hugged my husband. We cried. Everybody yelled and screamed. I cannot describe that. The we're saved. We are saved. And so that spotlight comes, but they did not approach us immediately. I don't know if they were circling around us. I don't know. The thing is that they released one of those smaller boats, that engine boats that they came to us. I remember them clearly saying this. Does anyone speak English? I say, I do in my bad English. I understand. I understand. I'm pregnant. I knew how to say that. So they were the maneuver took a few minutes. I don't know how long. I know that I had God right there in that, God, angels in that raft that they came to rescue us. And they actually transferred us from the raft to their boat. And I remember feeling relieved and at the same time, a feeling of, I don't know, loss. A feeling of loss, because I knew that in that raft I had left almost my life. I don't know. And I don't know where the raft went. Some people said that came with us, they said that they blew it and it went down. But I do remember faintly when we moved to that boat. I don't know, when we got to the ship, to the U.S. Coast Guard, somebody grabbed me by my arms and lift me up. And I went like, okay. And I said, I'm pregnant. And then he said, how many weeks? I was 3 months pregnant at that time. I couldn't communicate a lot, but I told them I was hungry. I was hungry. But what I remember was that I slept for an enormous amount of hours because I had not slept in 3 days. On the floor, on the cold floor of that ship. I didn't care about where we were going. And later on is when we found out we were going to Guantanamo Bay. I didn't care where we were going. We thought that, we're coming to the United States. I wanted to sleep. And I don't know how many hours I slept. I just know that I wanted to sleep. And so I'm very grateful because after that, they told us, Clinton had spoken and there were 30 or 40,000 Cubans in the process of being rescued, and that they were going to take us to another ship that were going to transport us to Guantanamo Bay. So that's when they took us to that destroyer, the American Navy destroyer. And shoeless, and I could see people on the floor with IV, almost dead. And it was just very awakening experience. I don't know at that moment what to think, but we were saved, and that was all that mattered. And I remember being optimistic because people will say, you know what it is? We crossed the ocean, and now we're going to be sent back to Guantanamo Bay. And I said, we will get out of there. We will get out of there. And that hope and that sense of that baby that I had gave me hope. Gave me hope. And I am not trying to say this because just to deceive you with my words. The baby gave me hope. I felt hopeful because I had accomplished something that I realized that most people do not. I was saved. And so we reached Guantanamo Bay on, I think it was August 22nd, 1994. And I started a different journey now in those camps. And so I remember them asking if somebody spoke English or whatever. And with my English that I knew, I said yes. And would you volunteer to work at the clinic, a dental clinic? And I said, absolutely. I mean, what am I going to do here in this camp, hearing people talking about hopeless thoughts? So I went and I put myself to work. I remember my husband saying, I want to go work there, but my English is not good. I said, mine is not good either, but let's go, let's do it. And he did, and he went to work with the in the operating room. We help people left and right. And the days went by. When my baby was born, a month later, I came here on March 3rd, 1995. So I left in 1994.
Okay, you left in 1994.
It took 6 months for me to get into the country after Guantanamo Bay. So
how long did it take from the when you left to get to America? How long were you on the raft? That was 3 days?
Yes, but they told us, I remember that the U.S. Coast Guard, one of the guys, was very friendly. He said we were 30 miles from Miami when they rescued us. We were almost there.
Wow.
And after that, the law changed, and we could not come to the U.S. In that fashion unless they really set foot on land, and that's very difficult. It's very difficult. I didn't. So that's the story basically in a nutshell. But it was a very it's a experience that has marked me. Listen, for years I had reoccurring dreams where I saw myself in the raft, either from here to Cuba back, and I went no, or from Cuba to here again, and I went no. So it was just like a very scary. It could anything. I was just thinking. Sometimes I am in the United States and the raft will go back to Cuba, or sometimes I was in Cuba and the raft was coming to the United States. We had reoccurring dreams, and my ex-husband had similar dreams too.
He did. Okay, so you guys had reoccurring dreams about either the nightmare of going back or the reminder of the journey here, which was
it was
tumultuous.
Very scary, and definitely it was super scary to see yourself here being sent back or go back, because you need to go. Yeah, it was very scary. I don't know which one is more scary, the one of coming here from Cuba or coming here from Cuba. That was very scary.
Both seem terrifying to me, yet one you actually accomplished. One is your actual story. How many people were on the raft?
7.
7 people.
7.
You all were just tied together? So when it was going up and going all the way back down, how did you guys not fall off?
No, we were holding each other. No, we were not tied. I don't know how. Talk about miracles. Do you believe in that? I believe in miracles. I don't know how we were. I don't know how all of us survived. I cannot tell you enough about. I'm a believer of God, the power of God, and the power of faith, and the power of positive thinking. Never in my mind I thought I was going to die. Never. For a moment I thought, okay, if I die, my child dies, and we both die together. But that's it. And I was not like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Oh my God, I'm going to die. No, it never in my mind. So that light that I saw from the Coast Guard was the light that I was waiting for. That was the light that I was waiting for. And it paved the way. I am so grateful to the United States military, not only for the rescue, the Coast Guard, and then the people in the destroyer who treated me with dignity, but also the military police that was in Guantanamo Bay, and people, the taxpayer who fed us, because we were there with taxpayer money. And there are stories in that part, because I encountered somebody who said something about that in Guantanamo Bay, and he was scolded by a superior. So yes, he said, well, you're here with taxpayer money. And so I complained to a superior and he scolded him. But, you find people every way, and it is true, and now that I see the situation, I see it's true. But, we were so desperate, and all we wanted, honestly, was a shot. All we wanted. I said, I don't care. I don't need your assistance. When I came to Miami, because I first came to Miami, my family received me. They flew me from Guantanamo to Homestead, and my family picked me up. I think there is a military base in Homestead. And so from that base, they transported us to, my family picked me up and brought me to Miami too. And so they said to me this: do not ask for help for the government. Do not get food stamps. Do not get anything. It will affect your citizenship. Whether that was true or not, the sense of pride was so high that I didn't. The only thing that my child received was health care, because he was in the age of shots, and He was a month old when he came to this country. But we never did. The sense of pride. And I said, I don't care. I don't care about your help. I want a shot. I just want a job. And I want a different life. I want a different life. I remember also, yeah, I wanted an opportunity. Give me an opportunity. Give me the light and I will follow myself. So when we came to, when we were in Arizona, because that's the thing, we came to Miami. My uncle lived with 8 other people in the house. And I said, this is difficult. We wanted to make progress. And so there was an agency that was actually allocating Cubans who were coming from that big influx to other states. And so I called them and I said, I would like to be relocated. And they said, okay, so the only thing that we have is Chicago. And I said, okay. So we went, we filled out the paperwork. We were scheduled to fly the next day. But then the lady called me and she said, you have a tiny baby. It's very cold. And I'm not sure if the conditions are right for your baby in that cold. So I'm going to send you to Arizona. And I said, you send me whatever you want. I was ready to embrace my fate. And I was so happy about it. So we came to Arizona and somebody that from a church received us. That experience was kind of like, he told us, I said, but don't worry about it. I remember being so upbeat. He said, we will succeed. And he said, I don't care if you will succeed. He said that to us. And I said, okay. I don't care if you succeed. But okay, we succeeded. We bought a home. I put myself through school. People said, you will never be able to go to school. You will have to work and work and work and work. And I said, my head, I went, I will find a way.
Now, when you say people, are these the same people that were at Guantanamo?
Yes. People who came with us, people that I talked on the phone in Miami, you really have to work right now, forget about school later on. And I came in 1995. In 1997, I put myself through school. I went to work early hours of the morning. I didn't come back to the camp until very late at night. I built a lot of relationships with the military. The positive talks that we had, how much they taught me. So when you get to the United States, this is what's going to happen. You need to know this, you need to know that, So I was excited. I could not, that's why I was blessed. I was blessed with the idea that I was surrounded by people, the military, who cared about me. And we grew fond of each other. So when I delivered my baby, I remember that they took me to a tent. It was aero transportable, the 5th or the 7th aero transportable hospital. Was it the Air Force? The Air Force. And so these women in the military that had grown fond of me went to my labor and they helped me. It was very uplifting. There was somebody, especially in the Navy, she was there with me. She gave me courage because it was my first baby. The doctor who delivered my son, he said, I'm sorry, I am not as gentle as they are because I was having trouble delivering the baby. In terms, as a first mother, so he said, and he had to do some maneuver that was a little bit painful. And he said, I'm so sorry, I'm not as gentle as the nurses are, but the nurses were amazing. And that was a different story. I remember the woman who was next to me. There were Haitians in Guantanamo Bay at that time, and they were also waiting, on the process to be able to come into the United States. Immigration will go there and process you, and whether your fate is in their hands. And so I remember her screaming loud, and when I am in pain, my reaction is, leave me alone, quiet. And so I remember that. And so I delivered my baby, and I went to the couple of days later. Look at this story. Listen to this story. My English grew in 7 months like you don't have an idea. I learned a lot. And so I went to, I think they were going to give my son a birth certificate. And if I show you the birth certificate of my son, it says, this certificate doesn't come from American citizenship. And it was the reason why is because Guantanamo Bay is a leased territory.
Well, and what a credible opportunity that you received. You were able to speak English. You volunteered. You didn't want to stay in where everyone was staying depressed and saying, oh, they're going to send us back. And you were like, pick me. You worked from morning to night with this dentist.
Mm-hmm. Until a week before I was being in labor, because I started getting swelling in my feet and that kind of stuff. And they said, you need to rest. But they all came and pampered me. They all came and say hello to me every day. I remember all of their names, and I cherish them because they were actually the reason why I survived. They gave me hope. You know, hope is really a beacon of light. And I am not using this as a metaphor. I'm using this as a real life psychology, whatever you call it. I'm not a psychologist, but I survived because I was full of hope, full of it. They were teaching me about how, there was Vincent. I don't remember his last name, but Vincent said to me, I just can't wait to see you in a supermarket in the United States. And when I enter a supermarket in the United States, the first thought that I had was Vincent. He was in the Air Force. He's one of the people that worked in the clinic. He was an assistant. So there was a lot of beautiful memories, and there were some unpleasant experiences, some people, but I can tell you that I met more good people than bad people. And when I met one, I just reversed it on them, like, your name is Rodriguez. What a name for an American. That comment was inappropriate, so I'm gonna put it back on you.
Yes.
So that kind of stuff, you know, it's what I can tell you. And up to this day, I remain upbeat about my life in the United States. And of course, like everybody else, I've had ups and downs. I have people who have told me on the phone, you have an accent, are you a Mexican? And it's, you know, the people who have mistreated me. And I say, I'm actually from the world. How about you? So that kind of stuff. You know, I do not get upset, and I feel that I have been given tons of opportunities, and I'm very lucky. That's all. I am not a multi-millionaire. Nothing like that. But what I have conquered, it has been more than enough. More than enough.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The fact that you have a doctorate, I'm currently in the process of getting my doctorate. I've experienced nothing such as yourself, and it is a challenge. So I can imagine that you don't necessarily see that as much of a challenge as what you've gone through, because being on a raft, coming here, and I remember in reading your story and reading your biography, hearing you say that you heard the screams of others as you were traveling, and for you to stay focused, to stay steadfast, for you to stay as positive as possible, as you had a seed in your belly, and the goal to get to that beacon of light, to have someone lift you up by the arms and bring you on that cold ship so that you could rest, knowing that you were safe. That in itself is an incredible accomplishment.
Yeah, but the incredible accomplishment, I think it in itself is, it's not just me surviving. It's the hope for survival. And the only thing that I remember from the man that I wish I knew, who lifted me up from the arms, is the silhouette. Because it was dark at night, but it definitely, you know, talk about lifting you up. He actually lifted me up. And it's everything, you know, leads and signals to a series of events that are miraculously. And that's how I see my life. And that's how I see the life of my children.
Yes. So speaking of your children.
My children, my daughter is studying, is in a PhD in UCF. And my son doesn't like school as much as we do. But he is a productive citizen, and not everybody is made for college, so we are okay with that. I have a wonderful small family, and we are blessed to be here. And I remind my children of their good luck to be here every single day. They are
absolutely
lucky.
Well, they're lucky, and they're also incredibly blessed to have a mother that is so driven, that knew that she wanted to raise a family in a safer place where they had the opportunity to get a better education and live a better life.
Hmm. For sure. And my father was a big support. Not only a big support, but set an example of discipline. Dad, minutes ago you talked about finishing the doctorate. Had not been for my father's discipline, he was very disciplined. He disciplined me. This is, that time you get up, this time this you do, this time. So I was very disciplined, like my father, very disciplined. And if you start something, you don't quit. You keep going. You keep going. You keep going. So that kind of drive, it's. I had no doubt. Look, my father, his influence about schooling and finishing projects was so strong that I never had a doubt that I would not accomplish finishing school. That was not the same way that I had no doubt or never thought about dying. I never thought about quitting school. It was not in the cards. My father, so in order for me to finish my doctorate, I disciplined myself to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning and ride all the way until 7. Every single day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, holidays, everything. And that's how I finished my dissertation.
You wrote from 4 a.m. to 7 p.m. the whole.
Every single day before going to work, I got up. This is what I'm going to do. And that's what I did. But the nice thing is that, I don't know, I got excited every time that I discovered something in the literature, for example. Oh, I discovered something it was all excitement. I promise you that I did not I feel sometimes overwhelmed and tired, but I felt excited, mostly excited. And that was, the trip to the US was scary, but at the same time, there was such a big hope behind that black curtain. And so the only thing that I have to do is just lift the curtain and the light will come through. And that's it. That is it. So that's the story. But honestly,
that's an incredible story. And I want to dive into your moving your experience here in America and your education, and how you have transitioned from middle school to being a University of Phoenix instructor. So let's jump into these rapid fire questions. We're going to shift gears for just a bit and to jump into these rapid fire questions. Now, the goal is to answer the questions as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Your competitors are the past guests. So at the end of the season, we'll see who was the fastest.
I am not very fast, so it doesn't matter. Go ahead.
It doesn't. It's all for fun. So what was the last book you read?
I'm reading Kissinger right now, but the last book that I read about 3 months ago was Tom Sawyer. I just reread it.
What do you do to relax?
I listen to music and I dance in my house by myself. Queen is my favorite.
Queen, okay. So what song are you dancing to in the living room from Queen?
I can dance from any of the Queen songs. We Are the Champion to I Dance a Bachata, whatever it is that I listen in the environment. I love Frank Sinatra. I also love Frank Sinatra. I also like opera, and sometimes I listen to Pavarotti, and whatever I am in the mood for. If I want to cry, I play a sad song and I cry. Whatever I feel like doing at that moment. Music is always uplifting.
It is, and there's a song for everything. So that is definitely an eclectic selection there. I love that. Tell me, are you a morning person or a night owl?
Very morning person. Very morning.
4 a.m.
It's easy for me to get up at 4 in the morning. Mm-hmm.
If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Superpower, fly. To be traveling around the world. And get quickly to places that I need to get and avoid traffic.
Yes, I'm with you with that. What is the one thing on your bucket list?
In my bucket list, I travel the world. I want to go to Greece. I want to go to the Netherlands. I want to go to all countries around the world. But the most important, and I don't want to travel the way that people travel. I want to get a backpack and jump in a train and travel the entire European continent and just visit all those places. I just don't want tour guides. I don't want any of that. I want my shoes and my backpack. I love that.
That's incredible. If you can meet with a historic figure, who would it be?
A historic figure?
If you can meet with a historic figure, dead or alive,
Oh,
who would it be?
Lincoln, Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln.
What would you ask him?
You know what? This is what I would ask him. How did you feel when so many Americans killed each other during the Civil War? Tell me your story. I sometimes, I was telling my son the other day, we were traveling to Starbucks and we were both going to get some nice frappuccinos. And I said, I wish there were really a portal in which I could travel time. And I wish I could go back and see the Independence War. And I see all of this history. I'm obsessed with the United States history. I'm not going to deny it. And so we talk about that. And he talked, Mom, but some of these presidents in the past, blah, 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 I don't care. I want to know them. I want to meet him. I want to know who they were. And how come they had that strength to create a new country and to liberate themselves from a king? That is, if I could travel the past, I will find a portal and just go there and talk to Lincoln, talk to them. And especially because of the Civil War. I actually read a book. You asked me about it. It's not a biography. I don't remember it. It's a few months ago. I bought it in Costco about Teddy Roosevelt and his wife, and that she was from the South, and all of the turmoil between the South and the North. Do you know what was really striking and interesting? That at that time, in order to avoid fighting in the war, in the Civil War, you could pay people who were poor. If you were in the upper classes, you could pay people who were poor to fight for you.
Really?
How about that? Isn't that interesting?
I did not know
Yeah.
that.
I will have to cross-check that fact and see if it is true, but that's what he said in the book.
I believe it. I believe it. Tell me, what is the best advice you've ever received?
Just be resilient. I never said that you cannot do this because you feel down because of the imposter syndrome. That's the best advice. Forget about the imposter syndrome. That's what I would tell you.
That's very good. I struggled with imposter syndrome when I started my doctorate.
We all do.
Yeah.
But now,
Definitely.
since I became a doctor, I go into the literature. I know how to fight it.
That's right. That's right. Two more. What is your favorite food?
Oh my God, pizza, Italian food.
Really?
Food. I do like pizza a lot. Do you know why? Because one of my huge cravings being pregnant was eating pizza. I remember I started my pregnancy in Cuba, and it was very difficult to eat pizza there. So the first thing that I tried when I got here was pizza and all kind of cheesy food because I love cheese.
You love cheese.
I love cheese.
That's so funny. I love Cuban food. Like I like the rice and peas. My husband's Jamaican, so there's a dish that's called rice and peas. It's very similar though to the addition Cuba, and it's one of my favorite things.
Well, in Cuba, that's called moros y cristianos. It's like okay, I don't know if it's exactly the same thing, but it is the white rice that gets tinted with the black beans, and then you got the black beans in there. And moros, because the moros are dark brown people, and the Christians at that time in Spain were the white people. So that's why they call it moros and cristianos. Like, it's very interesting, all the history behind the food and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So the dish is literally named after, like, in the description of describing people, like fair skin, dark skin.
Moros, because the Moros were dark people from the Middle East who came to Spain, and there was a war between Spain and the countries in the middle, especially South. We're talking about Andalusia, those places in the South, and then the Christians were white, so that's the white rice that gets tinted and mixed with the black. Yes. Very
wow.
Very interesting.
That was very interesting. My goodness. Last one.
My father, whose father was born in Puerto Rico, but whose mother was born in Spain, she would say moros and cristianos. We call it moros. That's what we call it. But they call it moros and cristianos. She spoke very Spanish Spain.
Wow. That's incredible. Last one. What are you most proud of in your life?
Proud of? What do you think? My children. My children. There's no career, nothing else. My children. They are the product of who I am and the product of who my father was. Both of them. I'm very proud of my children.
I can imagine. I mean, you carried Kevin in your body during focusing on your goal, getting to America, like, what is Kevin like? Is he very driven? Is he like, I imagine
Kevin is
just
very
being a seed in your belly during that time had to actually ingrain a few characteristics in him.
Yeah, Kevin is shy. His father has Chinese background, so his culture is kind of like he's Cuban, but his family is Chinese. Um, Chinese people who lived in Cuba, and so he's very shy. He's not as somebody who speaks a lot, but when he speaks, he's powerful. He's powerful. He's loving. My son, the other day, I have two dogs. They are both adopted. And the little girl that we just brought, she's a barker. She barks and he goes, "Stop talking to me that way. That's not the right tone, young lady." And it melts my heart to see how nice and cool and good kid he is. Totally a great kid. Adorable. I love my children. Do you have
And
children?
then I do. I have a 2-year-old. His name is Theo. He's the boss of the house. He runs everything. And then my oldest is like identical to me. His name is Isaac. I actually had a dream in the middle of the night. My husband and I had been married for about 3 years, and I had a dream in the middle of the night, and I heard audibly God tell me I was going to have a son and to name him Isaac. And I
Oh boy.
wake up like straight out of my dream, and I tap my husband, and I'm like, I tell him exactly what happened, and I was like, "Is this biblical?" And he's like, "Yeah, babe, Abraham, Sarah." Oh, that's right. And so then I remember going back to sleep, and in the morning, my memory, I woke up and said, "That's so crazy, that story about Isaiah, right?" And he was like, "It was Isaac, babe, not Isaiah." And I remember thinking like, well, that's not going to happen because I honestly didn't want any kids. And I was finishing my master's at the time. And so the and so I was like, we're not gonna do that anyway. So that's just an interesting
Right.
dream. And then next thing you know, I get a pulmonary embolism a month later. I get a pulmonary embolism, and I thought I was having a heart attack. The ambulance came and took me to the hospital, and they were like, "You have a few blood clots in your lungs, so your life is in danger, and so we're going to have to put you on blood thinners, and you can't be on birth control
You're
anymore."
so young.
I was 30, I was 33 or 30, I was 32, I believe, when that happened. I was 33 when Isaac was born. He's 7 now. And so, yeah, I had those blood clots. And then with Theo, my youngest, we just didn't have a baby. Like, we wanted to have another baby after Isaac, but COVID. And so
Um,
then all of a sudden, one day I was really sick. I kept fainting. I'll never forget. I walked out of the garage and I told my husband, "I think you're going to have to," and I was trying to say, "Catch me." And luckily he was quick witted and just caught me. And he said, "We're going to go to the hospital." I said, "No, just let me sleep it off." I woke up and I couldn't see out of this eye. And so they raced me to the hospital. And I remember wanting to leave so badly. I was in the emergency room and I was like pacing. I hate hospitals. And my mom and uncle came. My mom works for the VA and my uncle's an RN. And I just remember them like, getting them, like hurrying them along. By the time I get into the room, I had to use the restroom. And I came out to open the door to look at my mom. And the next thing I remember is that I was sitting on the bed and like there were people like poking at me and doing everything. And come to find out my hemoglobin was at 2, which apparently like normal hemoglobin's at like 14, 13.
mhm.
But they kept poking me because they said, "We've never seen a person alive at 2. You have no blood in your system and you have like hours to
Right.
live."
It's a miracle.
Yeah. It literally a miracle because I was also trying to go home. Like I was moments away from walking home because my husband left because he was like, "No, stay." So all that to say, that happened, and then they gave me like 3 things of blood, and a month later, Theo. So my husband was like, "No more babies because you like to try to die right before we have a kid." So we just have those 2.
Did they know why you had that embolism? Or why? What happened? Why did you
Uh,
have that?
the pulmonary embolism they said came because of the birth control. So
Mm,
they just had me off of that. And then the other was because I'm anemic. My mom's anemic. So she coincidentally, you know how that works out, coincidentally just happened to be coming from Tucson to see my grandma with my uncle, and my husband called her and she detoured to come to the hospital. And she's also anemic. And so she was able to tell the doctors our family history, and they ended up just putting the blood back in me. But yeah, so because of my anemia, I was just essentially running out of blood faster than I
Yeah.
was able to create it.
So your son's name is Isaiah because he was supposed to be born, and that's how he was supposed to be named. So I believe it. People's there are crazy things that happen in our lives, and people will question your sanity. And I said, well, tell me who is sane. Nobody is sane 100%. So okay, call me that crazy, whatever you want to call me. But there are things like that that happen, and we don't understand, and we doubt ourselves, and then we wind up finding out why those things happen. So
Oh, I walked in faith the whole time. As soon as I knew that he was in my belly, I wasn't surprised. And then I didn't have another name. So we named him Isaac Kai. My husband's name's Calamere. My middle name's Asina, and his name's obviously Isaac. And so Kai is his middle name. And so people would ask me like, "Well, what if it's a girl?" And I was like, "It's not a girl. It's a boy, and his name is Isaac." There was no option for it to be
not a
anything else. Like,
question.
I know what I heard. I know what's happening. He told me. So
Amazing.
that's how my
That is,
little one got.
that is an amazing story. Yeah, but you know what? Sometimes when you act on faith, things go well, right?
Right.
Things go well. I sometimes I don't have certainty, and I am not a sage or anything like that. I'm a normal human being, but sometimes when I act on faith, like for example, when I decided to jump from K-12 to higher education, there are years and years in K-12, all grade levels, loved it, first grade 10 years. And I can tell you with a high percent of certainty that the first graders in my life taught me how to be a teacher. And I do have an accent, as you can see, but I was able to teach them how to read because of, I said, okay, I need to learn how to pronounce these sounds as close as I can to the English so that they don't get confused. And I will get an American friend teacher, show me, tell me how you pronounce, because the I, for example, the I in Spanish sounds E, but the E is E in English. And so she says, no, this is it. And I go, it. Move your mouth like this, move it like that. And so I love teaching. So I became a reading specialist. And so with faith, asking the Lord, give me the power, give me the knowledge. With faith, I was able to accomplish that. And faith will this is a phrase that everybody said, faith move mountains. Yes, it does. It moves mountains. And so, yeah, I
No,
believe.
you're absolutely
I
right.
believe if God told you that it was going to be Isaiah, there is a purpose for that boy.
It is. It's Isaac, and it's funny because he's
I
such a lighthearted person. He's me, but a little boy, and so he's so fun. And Isaac means to laugh because Sarah laughed at the angel when she said she was going to have a baby at like 99. So she said to name him Isaac. And my son is the most joyful little human. He's always laughing, always giggling. So I love that about him and his story. But speaking of story, I want to get back to yours and talk about you received your bachelor's. From your bachelor's, is that when you started to teach?
Well, talking about God. So I was working in Phoenix. There's a street called McDowell. I don't know if it still exists, but there was a that's where I used to work in a cashing place. I was cashing checks, and I was always longing for teaching and teaching. I want to teach because that's what I did in Cuba. And so one time there was this lady who came from the Creighton Elementary School District with a check. At that times, debit cards and things like that were direct deposits, since they weren't like 100% now, but that time was in 1997. And she said to me, I will come when I cash the check. So I looked at the school district and I said, oh my God, you work in school. I want to be a teacher. And he says, you really want to be a teacher? I said, I want to be a teacher. I was a teacher in my country. And she says, you know what? This is the right moment because they're looking for bilingual teachers in Phoenix to work with the population of immigrants that are coming. They need, at that time, before the law that passed, where it was English only, at that time, they were looking actually for bilingual teachers. So she said, here's the phone number. go see and call this lady. His name was Marilyn, and call her and tell her. So I called her, and she says, "Okay, come on to the district. Let's talk." So they come into a program where they would hire teachers from other countries to teach while they were working on their certificate. So I told mom, send me all my credits from the university, blah, blah, blah. So they ran all the paperwork. They had another lady work with me. When my fingerprints cleared, they let me. But because I didn't have the certificate yet. It was in the process of being, um, issued. So she stayed with me in the classroom. I looked up in the internet and I learned she passed away because she was in her 80s when she was with me in the classroom. She was a retired teacher who got called from the principal to sit there with me. And so she spent an entire half a year around until my paperwork was in order. And then the principal says, now you need to take some other courses in order to just validate your certificate 100%, because I wasn't a provisional, so I needed a permanent. And the district started paying for my classes. I was lucky. And so one day she said to me, look, I know that you're interested in teaching reading. I have some budget to pay for courses to be a reading specialist. Do you want? And I said, are you even asking me? Come on, I want it. So every opportunity that I had. And so when I finished all of that and I had my permanent certificate, I decided that I wanted to go my master's degree. And that's when I went to Phoenix. I started in 2008, 2008, graduated in 2010. And so when I was in that stage, looking at these people, I could spot a couple of ladies with the cape and the medieval hats. And so I learned they were doctors I said, I want that. And I spotted, and like a transatlantic, I went at it. And so it took me a few years to get my ABCs together. And I graduated in 2022 after a hiatus because, unfortunately, my ex-husband and I divorced. And that divorce was rocky, especially when you go through those experiences together.
Together, right.
So then I said, okay, so it's time for me to retake the course of my ship, and I am going to graduate. Every time that I turn in something, great job, and I went, okay, I am doing this. And so the next day I woke up and I'm going to go and I'm going to fix my feedback. And yeah, mountains and mountains of feedback, but I saw that, oh, cool, this makes sense, and this makes sense, and this makes sense. One of the things that I have to tell you as a doctoral student is I tackle my feedback from the easiest to the hardest. So you know that you go through all those comments. So this one is a little bit hard. I'm not sure if I understand this. Let me go to the ones that are easier. So by the time I got to that one, all of the feedback that he had given me led me to understand this big piece here that I did not understand. And that was every time I did it. So that was my strategy. And I finished. During that defense, he said to me, when they say Dr. Lang, you know that they call you Dr. Lang after you finish, he says, you look in shock. I was in shock. And guess what happened? When I finished, I was so disciplined to get up at 4 a.m. and research that I kept on writing and writing and writing and writing and publishing and writing and publishing and writing and publishing. And it became my hobby, apart from my wonderful curiosity. I have a curiosity to learn about stuff, and so especially educational research. And so I devoted my energy during that time to just write, and because I didn't know what to do with my time. I was so, imagine you are an Olympic person, you know, what do you call that? A sportswoman, and you
An athlete.
An athlete. That's the word. Thank you. So if you're training and training and training for a year, and all of a sudden the Olympics end, what do you do? So that's what happened to me.
Well,
And so
so
I feel,
what's going on with you right now? Because you've accomplished so much. What could possibly be next?
look, that's a good question. But my main goal is to go into work at the College of Doctoral Studies because I want to help other people with the dissertation. But there are some steps that I need to go through. But that will be the ultimate goal. And if I discover another goal, I will go for that one. But for the time being, but I am in the College of General Studies fulfilling my mission. And my mission is to help those undergrad get where they need to be because they need me. And I feel so accomplished, and I feel so I feel by the stories that I hear from my students, I feel a sense of reverence and respect. These are people who work very hard. A lot of them don't even have a computer to work with, or they have, the things that they have are not optimum too. And they're still, they are trying and they are trying and they're trying. And that level of persistence motivates me to be the best I can be for them. And in some cases, I'm very happy when I see that they go, "Oh my gosh, I did it. Thank you, Dr. Lang." And I say, "Thank you." Because I get very nervous. If I look at my roster and I see students start dropping, and I go, "Why? Why are you dropping? It's too early in the game." And so maybe other circumstances are, variables that are there. But it really hurts me when I see my student dropping because I always say there is another way. Rather than dropping, there is another way. Try to inspire them. Yeah,
You
that's all.
used your incredible story to inspire them and to stay focused on making sure that others are reaching their goal. As you've said several times, you see that light and you head towards it, just like you did on that raft.
Even if you see a glimpse, even if you see a glimpse, even if you see a glimpse. So just to kind of like talk metaphorically, the U.S. Coast Guard light showed up and disappeared at times, and showed up and disappeared at times, and I knew it was somewhere that I was gonna find it. I already saw you, so there's no way that I am going to desist. So, and that's the thing, just to let them see a little bit of that glittering light, that gleams, that small spark that they need to see in order to be able to graduate and follow that spark. That's all.
If there was someone listening or watching right now that needed that spark, that needed to see the light, whether it be in their current situation at their job, if it was their current situation at school, or just in their life, what advice would you give them?
Rather than staying stuck in the drastic moment of either danger or negativity, God always gives us fine signals. And when I say God, I say any God that you profess or no God, but they're always signals. If you remain focused on your goal, you will see the glimmering light. The problem is when you become pessimistic and then you start getting diverted from that light. You move further and further away. In order to get close to that, you need to look for it. Let me see you. Keep on looking. And even if you don't see it because it's a very dark night and the waves are this high, you keep on looking for the light because it will show up and it will present to you, even if it's for a second. And once you see it, you will fall in love with it and you will follow it. That's the end of the story. That's how I can put it in words. And if there is a God, let him speak through me the truth, because that's how I have experienced my life in every single moment, including my divorce. That was pretty rough. I always knew that there was light, and there was.
I know that people that are listening and that are watching are going to be inspired by what you just said and your incredible story. Lastly, I just want to know, as a woman who has had such an elaborate experience from Cuba to Guantanamo Bay, all the, coming here to Arizona and experiencing teaching children, and then now at University of Phoenix, you were a student. Now you're on the other side teaching. what's the difference? What is that like for you, knowing that you've had this experience all the way up to your doctorate, and now you're actually giving back to the students? What would you say the vast difference is?
It's I'm in awe and in gratefulness. That's the only thing that I can say. But it also, as a student, I still view myself as a student. I'm always in the shoes of a student, always, because once you lose those shoes, get out of the game of teaching. You gotta wear those shoes in order to be productive. And you know that uppity doctor, no, you are a student, because not only you are teaching, but you are learning from these people, and every batch of students that you get is different, with different needs. So what it is it has given me a tremendous sense of empathy and a tremendous sense of pride. Like, I accomplished this, and now I can give you, and I am going to give you no matter what you give me. My mission is to give you and move. Can you imagine what it is to have somebody change his or her life because you were there for a fraction of 5 weeks?
Right.
I mean, that person is going to move into another course, and that person is going to graduate. That person's financial situation, who knows where this person is now, and then 5 years from now, where this person is going to be, just because you were there for a fraction of 5 weeks. Because this is the class that I'm teaching, is 5 weeks long.
That has to be transformative for those people. And I know that simply based off of your story, because you've mentioned several people by name that you remember who were instrumental in helping you accomplish your journey thus far. And what a journey it has been. And we are so, so grateful that you took the opportunity to share that story with us. I know that all of the listeners and all the viewers are so grateful. If you were to walk away with a last note for anyone listening, anyone watching, what would that be?
The only thing that I can tell you is have faith in yourself. And I know this sounds empty. Everybody says that, but have faith in yourself, and do not let the demons inside you take you to that dark place. Always rise to the light. And let's say be positive. You will always find an angel. Whether it's an angel, you want to call it an angel, you want to call it whatever you want to call it, you will always find someone. My mother told me this when I was in the base, in the Guantanamo Bay base. She said, I prayed for you so much that you would find good people, that I knew it was impossible that you wouldn't. And I not only one, many. My first Thanksgiving Cuba doesn't celebrate Thanksgiving. So the general at that time of the base invited my husband and myself to his place. I was in a camp, but he invited me to experience Thanksgiving. People gave me those experiences. People are good. Most of the people that we meet are really, really good. And if you focus on that, they will give you their good. Now, if you focus on the bad, on the dark, they will give you their dark. We all have a dark side. But if you look again, focus on the light that you find in people, and keep on trying to find that light, and you will see the light not only in people, but the light that you need. That is it.
You heard it here first. Dr. Lang said it. Focus on the light, focus on positivity, and it will help you accomplish your goals. Dr. Lang, thank you so much for joining us. Somehow this is the end of this episode of Degrees of Success. What an incredible episode it has been. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Frida Richards, reminding you that this chapter, this very next one, might just be the best one yet. See you soon.